The process of doing Sons over 7 seasons, I didn't come into that thinking this is a greater mythology. I think as the characters developed and the fan base got more intense, there was talk of the prequel naturally sort of happened because, we had those voice flashbacks with Jax hearing his dad.
Inside the club, there had to be truth. Our word was our honor. But outside, it was all about deception.
We knew about his dad's manuscript, and so there was a sense of that history already. And people were curious about potential prequel, and I've talked a little bit about it to the network, and they're excited about it. I think for me, the reason we jumped into the Mayans next is because Mayans MC, it's really the next chapter in the Sam Crow mythology. There was a conversation I had with an FX executive years ago. They were looking for content for Spanish-speaking stations. I hadn't really given that much thought, and just in that conversation threw out the notion of, well, we have the Latino-based MC, the Mayans in Sons, maybe there's something there, and that idea stayed, I think, in the consciousness of everybody. The reason why we jumped into the Mayans next is because I like to find an organic way to lead into that prequel, meaning rather than just do the mythology of where we join Jax and where he ends up, and then jumping into the prequel. For me, it's more exciting, and I think for a viewer as well, to have it not be linear. So we get to go on this little tangent and stay within the MC world, but through the eyes of a completely different culture, and have that story really become its own mythology and find its own voice. In terms of the bigger story, I like the idea of sort of going off on this other journey, and then when you're not expecting it, have some tether, some intersecting story that introduces the potential for revealing the first 9. So it sort of comes out of nowhere, but there's just a more organic track that's led to it that suddenly it's there in front of us, and it makes sense to then journey back and take a look at that. It's like find a way creatively as if I had planned it all. I didn't want to hire a writer who had been in a writer's room before. I didn't want somebody that had 5 or 6 years under their belt, and I really wanted somebody fresh and green that didn't have the parameters. For me, that was my biggest asset coming into TV. I didn't know the rules, and I think because of that, I just kept breaking them. And I was blessed to be on a show like The Shield, which was all about breaking the rules and pushing the boundaries. And I was blessed to have a showrunner like Sean that could wrangle me and point my insanity in the right direction.
Your turn to play bad cop?
Nah. Good cop and bad cop left for the day. I'm a different kind of cop.
And I really feel like that's the energy that I want to bring into this.
Got it. You're creepy in both languages. What's up, man? Good to see you.
For the pilot, I interviewed a lot of writers, and I ended up hiring a really talented guy, Elgin James.
My story? What is my story?
Elgin culturally is just a little bit of everything, and including Outlaw. I mean, it's an amazing story, and he was just, for me anyhow, he was sort of qualified on every level. And co-wrote the pilot with him, and he will run the show with me that first year.
I mean, this whole process with Kurt as the director has been like mind-blowing.
I mean, really what it takes to be a showrunner means is you have people dousing you with gasoline, and then you have a dozen people with matches just throwing them at you the whole time. And to be able to keep your vision and your cool and your calm and your empathy, it takes something very, very, very special.
I know the MC culture fairly well, the outlaw culture. I spent a lot of time there, but I'm a white guy. I have a sense of thematically what that world is in terms of family and commitment and passion, but it's not who I am. I could tell the story of a working class white family because that's where I come from, even though I wasn't a biker, but I don't necessarily feel qualified to tell the story of what it's like to be a Latino man. So I've hired Emilio Rivera as our technical advisor.
The reason I'm happy that we're doing the Mayan MC predominantly with Latino cast and crew is because we know the ins and outs of everything. We know what's real and what's not.
Emilio played Alvarez in Sons of Anarchy, and he's coming back as the boss man in Mayans. And his presence, he's so real, and he brings that son's history with him.
My research is on, it's sort of on the script level in terms of what the world looks like and how that informs story. As far as the research and finding that place, that's not my job. We want to be very specific in the two different worlds we're creating on the Mexican side of the border and the American side of the border. We know we will be scouting in Mexico and in those areas, and we may actually shoot there for the pilot, and then we would ideally try to match that location or create that location somewhere where we base the series. Official day one Mayan MC pilot. If you walk away with anything from this pilot, Jesus is the heart of Christmas. I'm not someone that really cares all that much about being politically correct or saying or doing the right thing in terms of upsetting people. So I try to speak my truth, and sometimes it gets me in trouble. I don't like to direct actors and say, okay, move here, move here, move here, move here. I like them to be able to find it within the space so it feels real, so they feel like it's their process as well. And then most of the time I can cover generally what I had a sense of doing. And then I'd go explain it. And then what happened sometimes is that in my explanation, there was a sense of it being the simplest and most organic choice, and even with camera work.
Oh no, did I hurt you?
Stay there and get a little bit sad, the both of you. And you're pregnant. Cut. Cut, cut, cut.
Check this out, man. So you want to open the bags, you push this button here, push that button there, and there you go. See that? And then you want to close it, you push the other button, you go down. Now somebody saw that on my Instagram and said, you know what? You gotta have those bags go up a little bit faster, you're gonna pull out your gun. Well, you know what, brother? I carry my gun right here. You know what I'm saying? Carry the explosives there, so we're good.
You know, we saw in Sons, usually after church, there would be some kind of party at the clubhouse. And this is really the first time we've seen the Mayan version of that, you know? And, but it's, although the players are different and the food is different and the music's different, the need for it is the same. For me, the finer details of all this shit, thinking through the same way an actor goes in terms of what's my moment before, what's my moment after, like the logic of how shit happened, so that you just don't open it up and conveniently for story, so that it's not just about seeing it. It's like, how did that happen? Someone may not even notice that, most people, but then for me, like in that frame, I see the story. So that's one of those just world details that I kind of drive people crazy with, especially people who aren't used to working with my level of obsessiveness. And they either stick around or they go away. That's now an ashtray. Paula? Magic, thank you. Timing of that was pretty good. Paula, once again, magnificent. You don't confuse your phone with the gun. Put the gun in the best. Here we go. Pictures of the easy first sees of him. Yeah. I think it's going to be weird if it's just pictures of him drinking coffee. So here's what happened. It happens very rarely. There was an actual technical glitch with the card in the camera. Apparently these cameras, they don't use film. It's a little digital card, and somehow happened. I guess they literally overheat, and that's the magic of what we do. When they open up that door, it's not that. It's a fucking it's a duffel bag with everybody's shit in it.
Okay.
Okay? As insane as I am sometimes, being a perfectionist and intense, I try to balance that with some level of absurdity and humor and make the process, I won't go as far as to say fun.
Kurt will let you know when you're doing bad, you know, and when you're not up to par, and then he'll let you know when you're doing good, and there's no bullshit. You know, I dig that, man.
I think he and Elgin saw something that we thought we saw at the time as it was forming, but it's kind of way beyond that now.
You know, Kurt Sutter just has this way of storytelling that is so believable, and it's in your face. It's just real life. It's real world.
And as I've said, I'll be checking myself into the Mayo Clinic on May 17th. Today was a good day. It felt good. A lot of moving parts, but I think we got everything. I don't even know if I'm making sense anymore, but no, it was a good day. I always like to feel that I always leave you with a covered in a dose. So thank you. No, I echo all that from the entire cast and the crew. Everyone has been brought their A game and let me be as insane as I need to be to get this done. And I think we have something pretty great. And so I thank you for tolerating what it is I do, because apparently my process is not for everyone. But, you let me capture the vision that Elgin and I think had for this pilot. So I thank you very much. I got the editor's cut about 10 days ago or so, and then I had a week or so to turn it around to do a first cut for the network. And you turn in a first cut pretty quickly. I think they have a sense of what they want to do with this and when they want to do it, so I think there's a hard out and stuff for production and airtime and all that stuff. I hate when we have a hack director. Fucking takes me forever to put together a cut. So there's a lot of story, there's a lot of visual design, there's a lot of sound design, there are a lot of pieces. And when you have that many pieces that you're forced to put together in 8 or 9 days, no matter how much you qualify something as being rough or temporary, the viewing experience for the studio network is always going to be what it is. And what it is that they look at this, you know, they look at the cut through a completely, maybe not a different lens, but I would say that their camera is pointing in a different direction. Right now, and I think the reason why I'm doing this for you guys is because this is that awful place that a creator is in when you're just sort of in the hallway and you don't have the actual notes to hate or to execute, and yet you have a vague notion that they fucking hate it. So you're just like, Those are a follow-up of a phone call I had with the studio and the network. I'll actually read my response to these notes. My creative process is always the same, and yet I always expect a different result. In recovery, we would call that the definition of insanity. Meaning, doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Not sure if you realize it, but these notes are pretty much the same that I got for the SOA pilot. And in a broader sense, for TBX as well. Clarity, simplify story, lock down the hero's point of view, and then in the case of Sons, Also a major recast. Let's see. So I said I will go through these notes with Elgin and my post team, and we will come up with solutions, the ones that we can provide in the cut and the ones that we will need to create. So I was constantly editing myself based on the other hats I had, and ultimately to my detriment, right? So, and that's a hard fucking pill to swallow.
You feel crushed because you think you have it, and just because of all the blood and the sweat that you've put into it. And you know that every single person that was working, from driving the honey wagon to cooking food to acting to, you know, just everyone had put so much of their souls into it. So you feel crushed, but honestly, it's because of the relationship that we have with FX, with John Landgraf, and the relationship that he has with Kurt. You listen. And so we listened, you know? So it wasn't like a full shock and surprise of like, they don't know what they're talking about. It was like, okay, how can we execute better? All we want to do is make something great.
Obviously, I've created shows and I've directed, but I've never created a show and then tried to direct it in terms of the pilot. And what I became aware of in the process was that for me, and the way my brain works and my process works is that it became very difficult for me to give every area, every creative area 100%. As I looked at our first pilot, beyond casting and issues, you know, it became clear to me when I was really able to give 100% to story and character and relationship, and then when I was able to give 100% to the visual palette of the pilot. And I feel like what we've been able to do now is hand off the visual palette of a pilot, which obviously is essential, to Norberto and you know, Norberto was part of the team before any of this changed, but it just made sense, beyond, the fact that I think he's just the right director for the project. You know, there was already, he was already a member of the team.
I overlook all aspects of production in conjunction with Kurt Sutter and Elgin James. In a perfect world, the executive producer director allows the writers to be free. I am taking their material, hopefully in collaboration with the key players, taking it to a new level. So we'll just do one where we stay with Easy, and then let me see, Hank comes over and says, hey.
What happened when I directed the first pilot was I had too many fucking hats on, right? So I had the writer hat on, which is okay, but I also had a producer hat on. So I was constantly looking at shit in terms of like, how does this work? How am I gonna plug this into the series? Does this location work? Will I be able to recreate this? And then I had the series creator hat on in terms of, bigger picture stuff. So what I found in watching the pilot again was that the scenes that were really strong in terms of acting and story were somewhat mundane visually, and the opposite of that. So in fairness, I've realized that it's just not a smart thing for me to do. But I knew I had to step away from that. And the good thing is FX doesn't make a lot of pilots, and if they believe in something, they will reshoot it. Not that every show goes through that. And it's a process, I think, that happens as a result of collaboration. Because there's this stuff you wish you could foresee, and you just can't until it's up there. And to know what works and what doesn't work and what you need and what people are gonna respond to. I've been working with the writers for about a month and a half now, and I'm off writing the first episode. And I think because this pilot is stronger and the characters are more defined and more direct, I feel like we have a really strong launching point into that first season. We ended up doing a couple of the characters went away completely. We recast the antagonist completely, changed that character, and so we had some big cast changes, but primarily they weren't because of actors or performances. It was so clear to me that it was a script issue and a character issue.
The second go, I really wanted to be bigger. I felt like, you know, not that you have to be big to be in prison or you have to be big to be able to defend yourself or anything like that. I mean, it's about the fight and the dog. I felt like, and Kurt felt the same way, Elgin felt the same way. It's just something that I couldn't really reach within that certain amount of time for the first pilot. And so after that, I just continued to stay on the path of bulking up. And then I put on a good 20-something pounds.
You good with that?
Yeah. Whatever the club needs.
We are a continuation of Sons of Anarchy. The audience is getting more of we are Mayans MC, so you're seeing it through the Mayans' point of view, through their perspective. But in this post-Jax Teller world, you get to see other groups, you know, life moves on. And you get to see these other characters, these other motorcycle clubs trying to balance their life and power and money and drugs. It's everything that you loved in Sons and more.
That's kind of sounded kind of good, right? I like that.
Literally has everyone involved, fingerprints all over this thing. So even to talk about it, I feel like I'm isolating it to be like, for one, I can take very little credit for it, but to just assign credit here and there, you know what I mean? It literally just became what started off with Kurt's and I's ideas and the stuff on paper, to Norberto's visualizing it, to Marco building it, to Itai shooting it. But then it's like every single camera operator, it's everyone in the art department, it's every single thing. Like everyone put their fingerprints and their soul into this show. And that's what I really look forward to, is to be able to execute that for a season, to hopefully be able to execute that for more than one season, to hopefully execute it for a very, very long time.
All right, good week, everybody, good week.
The audience can expect what every actor in this cast can expect. As of right now, we've only read the pilot, and that is the unexpected. Don't be too comfortable. Things change very quickly in this world.
There's not a forthright Samoan in my church pew by end of day tomorrow. I'm afraid there will have to be a Mayan in this place.
And I think audience members will really see that. Our stories are tight and cool and interesting and gory, and it's going to shock you, it's going to delight you. You'll love us, you will hate us, but, you know, come along for the ride anyway.
What I expect on the Mayans is it's mind-blowing what's happening right now. And I mean, I just see us celebrating and continuing this for years, season after season. That's the Mayans right there. That's the M for the Mayans. Everybody has their gang signs and Mayans.
Everybody has their own thumbprint. That's really the key, is to allow your thumbprint to be felt. And how will you help in the storytelling?
Nunca te descubres de necesitar a tu familia. La sangre es la sangre. Lo único que importa.
I think the audience with Mayans MC, they're going to have their own expectations or their own comparisons, but you have not just the motorcycle club, you have the Latin culture and the heritage and the superstition. Then you have the family aspect. And then you have the inner conflicts and turmoil. There's a lot of complicated facets that feed into all that. But to me, it makes it very intriguing.
El Hermano Menor, the new prospect.
I think right off the bat, you're gonna see how genuine the group comes off on film. It's real. The love in the group is real. The affection we show for each other, the brotherhood is so real and honest on and off screen that I think the viewer's gonna enjoy that. And they're gonna feel it, and they're gonna wanna keep watching. They wanna see this come to life.
I'm excited about the audience because the audience is gonna be able to follow it, just like scene by scene. They're like, I get it, I get it, I get it. And that's the thing, it's not just us giving you stuff, it's the audience giving us stuff too. So when you have those two things working together, then that's where the beauty of storytelling really goes to the next level.
Yes, let's put a couple people up there. If it's safe, if it's safe, let's put a couple of our kid, maybe a mom and a kid or something. And if it's not safe, just kids.